You know, politics at times, it can make really, really strange bedfellows. Believe it or not, Steve Cortes right now, as a populist, nationalist, America First proponent, I'm going to praise George Soros. But look, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And in this case, regarding his recent op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, George Soros is exactly right. The title of that op-ed is BlackRock's China Blunder. And when it comes to seeing China, George Soros, believe it or not, the patron saint of the left, a man who has funded a lot of terrible, damaging political movements in this country, George Soros does see the dangers of China and the risks of China to the United States with very clear eyes. So let's give credit where it is due. Probably never thought you'd tune in to find Steve Cortes saying something positive about George Soros. But as I said, strange bedfellows in politics. So joining me to help break this down is the author of The Coming Collapse of China, Gordon Chang. So Gordon, before we get to the Soros part and to some of the quotes from his actual op-ed, I want to speak more broadly about this issue of what investment management giant, the behemoth BlackRock, is doing in China. They actually advised that their clients triple their allocation to Chinese assets. Now, that is a massive move if the clients are to heed their advice. But the reality is, Gordon, as I'm sure you well know, I used to trade China stocks for many years on Wall Street before I got into the game of politics. And the reality is, Chinese investments have massively underperformed U.S. investments. For years, you have been far, far better off. Despite the media's often love affair with the Chinese supposed growth story, you've been far better off investing here in the United States than investing in China. So what do you think BlackRock sees here? Has something fundamental changed regarding their outlook for China, or are they just trying to curry favor with the CCP?
My guess is, Steve, that they're just trying to curry favor because since the beginning of November, first week, Chinese stocks have lost about $3 trillion. And the bloodletting is not over yet because Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, with his common prosperity plan, is taking China back to Maoism. And this really is a very dangerous period because he doesn't believe that prosperity is important, at least prosperity as we think about it. What he's thinking about is redistribution, extortion, taking billions of dollars from big companies. Alibaba, for instance, just turned over $15.5 billion to essentially the Chinese government. Right. So this is a very dangerous time for investors.
Yeah, no, it's curious to say the least. I could probably be a little more damning than that about what BlackRock is doing right now. And by the way, I do want to get to George Soros. Again, I can't believe that I'm quoting George Soros in a positive way, but I am because he wrote an excellent op-ed. And to this point, by the way, that there's no true private enterprise in China. Here's what he wrote about in the Wall Street Journal, George Soros. He says, it meaning BlackRock, has drawn a distinction between state-owned enterprises and privately owned companies. But that is far from reality. The regime regards all Chinese companies as instruments of the one-party state. So, Gordon, to your point, as Xi pursues a very Maoist bent on governing China, there really truly is no private sector. Isn't George Soros correct here?
George Soros is absolutely correct, because really what we are seeing is Xi Jinping trying to take over the major private companies, the Alibabas, the Tencents, the NetEases, all of them. They're basically going to become instrumentalities of the Communist Party. And so Soros is 100% right on that. And indeed, really, it means that the stock market in China is going to be politically driven. It's not going to be driven by earnings or things that work and matter here. It's going to be driven on what Xi Jinping thinks on any particular morning when he gets out of bed.
Yeah, no, 100%. And look, we don't give stock advice on the show. I used to do that in my past media life. Don't give stock advice on the show. But I have to say that, you are essentially betting on the goodwill of Chairman Xi if you invest in China, which makes me think BlackRock has to know this, and I think they're up to no good. They're just trying to curry favor, unfortunately, with the regime in Beijing. Well, listen, Gordon, we are not going to make a practice, you and I, of praising George Soros, but we did tonight, and I thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'll praise you instead.
All right. Hey, I'll take that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.